Welcome to Thomistic Womanhood. In today's video, we are going to speak about the Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who has, sadly passed on. She died a couple days ago due to pancreatic cancer complications. And she was a very prominent feminist. She left a large legacy of rulings on the Supreme Court that put in place many of her ideas about how the world should be. And I do notice some problematic things about her thinking and her life and such things like that. So in today's video, I'm going to speak briefly about that. I think she's a good example of what I like to call the bridge burning that feminists often do, especially feminists of her generation. So we are going to speak briefly on that. I'll try to keep it positive. I don't want this to sound like a downer, but I do think it's something that needs to be talked about. Welcome to Thomistic Womanhood. Happy Thomistic Tuesday or whenever you're watching this. So as mentioned earlier, unfortunately, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a Supreme Court Justice on the American Supreme Court, has unfortunately passed on. And there has been a lot of talk about her legacy and about the work she did. And I do want to kind of point something out that I think a lot of the media glosses over. And in case let me set some of the context a little bit, and then we'll talk briefly about some of the concerns I see. So, she was a Supreme Court Justice. I don't know where you're at, if you're in America or whatever watching this, but in America, we have a judicial system and a kind of a government that is set up of almost three parts, sort of, roughly speaking. We have the president, we have the Congress, we have the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the highest court in the land, and a lot of their rulings are extremely powerful. They set precedents for other cases and the way other things can be decided. These are not things that can be voted on, and in fact, a lot of things that are very controversial and that were voted on can be, if those who, let's say, lose the vote don't like the results, they can often create cases, and then those cases will get appealed and sent to the Supreme Court for the Supreme Court to decide. And there have been cases where the rule of the people has been sidestepped because the Supreme Court, will rule something different, and then it becomes the law of the land. So it is made up of 9 judges, and these 9 judges are very powerful. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg, up until very recently, a couple days ago, she was one of those judges. Now, she had a very feminist outlook on life. She believed that men and women weren't that different, that there should be equality, and that men and women are basically interchangeable, and there should be no idea of women's work and men's work, that it's just everybody should be allowed to do everything they want. And that sounds good in practice, or in theory, but in practice, it can be problematic. When you approach men and women as if they are perfectly equal and there are no differences, it does ignore the fact that there are differences. We know that women can bear children and men cannot. And that can lead to some complications for women's lives when we pass laws and do rulings on the assumption, or rather the determination, that there will be no differences between men and women, and we move toward a androgynous society. This was very much this woman's thinking. She's quoted many times as saying that she believes there shouldn't be like women's work and men's work. And when you look at her life, she was, she had she's done traditional things. She married at 21. She had 2 children. Sounds like she had a wonderful relationship with her husband. He was a cook. He was very good at cooking. And he also was a good, what we call co-parent. Nowadays there's an expectation that men and women are going to share 50-50 in the work and the parenting responsibilities. And her husband, and this is back, around like the 60s, 70s, back before this was a common thing, her husband was very involved on the domestic side of things. As mentioned earlier, he was a great cook. He did all the cooking. He also helped raise their 2 children. And this is interesting because she enjoyed a privileged position. The vast majority of women do not have husbands that cook all the time, and often men are not as hands-on with their children. Now, that is not always men's fault. Most men want to shoulder the burden of breadwinning and providing for the family, and that will often take them out of the home for a long time. Her husband caught cancer or developed cancer at a very early age. He was in college when he developed cancer, and I would imagine that that was probably a factor in why he was so hands-on at home, due to his cancer diagnosis and his bad health. He was probably not able to, go hard at his career maybe the way a man would differently. He did have a successful career, don't get me wrong. He did, accomplish a lot and contribute a lot. He was also an attorney. They had the same career basically, but there does seem to be a difference there. Another thing that I thought was interesting about her life was her husband did use his connections in the old boys club to get her further in her career. Some people do think that it may have been a factor in her nominations, and being nominated to the Supreme Court. She was passed over 3 times for nomination, and then I believe her husband may have gotten involved, used his connections or something there, and then that helped her get nominated to be in the Supreme Court. Now, that is a little murky. What I do know though is she is quoted as saying that he did use his connections to help further her career. So that's interesting, because she is someone who later, I watched one of her documentaries, and she is quoted as saying, she went into a case, and when she was making her case in front of the other judges, she is quoted as saying, removing their foot from the necks of women. So, and people asked her later, they're like, isn't that a little like melodramatic or shocking? And she's like, yes, that's why I used it. So, as someone who is going to portray the interactions between men and women that way, it's very interesting that she would use her husband's connections to further her career, and then turn around and say men are, stepping on the necks of women. And this is something that I see in a lot of feminists. A lot of them, like this woman, they were able to marry, they were able to have children, they were able to enjoy great marriages, and yet it wasn't good enough, and they decided to work to create a world where the very things they were able to enjoy become less available to other women. And I find that very problematic. It's, to use a metaphor, it's like you can imagine a bridge. There's traditional womanhood and marriage and motherhood on one end, and then on the other side of the bridge, let's say there's a river. You have a bridge on the other side of this river. You have careers, education, personal achievement, And I feel like a lot of feminists, they do the motherhood thing, they cross the bridge, and instead of leaving the bridge there so that women can go back and forth as they please, and then have a proper choice between motherhood and career, I think some of them will then burn the bridge behind them. And I would, make the case that through a lot of her rulings and the work she did, I feel like she's kind of worked to tear down this bridge. And then she's made it harder for women to go back and forth. She was very into abortion rights. That was a big cause that was, near and dear to her heart. And I find this problematic. She's been able to enjoy motherhood. How many of us are able to, get married at 21? When you were 21, how many eligible men were there? We live in a society where, because everything's equal and men don't expect to be providers, they're not really eligible to get married at 21, and now we have a hookup culture, partly because abortion has been so free and easy, and also that what goes along with abortion is the loosening of the sexual morality, and then we get the hookup culture, and these are things that this woman, through her work, helped bring about. She pushed for more abortion rights, for more access to abortion. She pushed for more equality. She pushed to take away the view that a man should be the breadwinner and a woman can expect a right to support from her husband. She worked to remove things like that. And then naturally now, us women, us millennial women and Gen Z, we have a harder time achieving the same things that women of her generation got like pretty automatically. I mean, she met her husband in college and then just got married, and that was that. A lot of us, when you look at the statistics, a lot of women are marrying at 27. We are marrying at later ages. When you're 27, you're well out of college. So again, my condolences to the family. It is, it's always sad when someone dies. So that is unfortunate. But again, I do, find it a little ironic that, this woman was able to experience the best of womanhood. She had a marriage to a man she loved. It sounds like they had a really great relationship. They had a happy marriage. And she's experienced the benefits of, traditional womanhood, but yet she worked to change society to make those benefits less available to other women. At least in my opinion, that's what I think the effect of a lot of her rulings were. Yes, the rulings are often portrayed as being a step forward for women, but again, when you look at the results of things like this equality, taking away the idea that a man should be a breadwinner, that forces more. When you don't expect men to be breadwinners and you start shaping society to move away from that model, well, that means there's going to be less breadwinners around. And if you want to be a traditional woman and stay at home with your children, you need a breadwinner type man. And if we're going to adjust society on the assumption that, having roles for men and women is bad, well, if you're going to take away that option for many women. And so I find a lot of her work concerning. And it sounds like some of that work is going to come to an end now. But anyways, I just wanted to kind of talk about this a little bit. It's a quick video. I hope it makes sense. But I just wanted to kind of take this opportunity. There is a lot of media attention on her right now, and I just want us to consider a certain angle here that I feel isn't really being represented. So anyways, that's just my thoughts. I hope that was either helpful, entertaining, maybe it was irritating, I don't know. Feel free to comment or ask any questions down below. And yeah, have a good day.